Welcome to episode 39 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. Okay, we're in the thick of it right now. From my admittedly comfortable seat, I find the need to practice Lamaze breathing before digging into Twitter each morning. We have over 107,000 people dead from COVID-19 and riots happening all around the globe. The percentage of people who are jobless is close to reaching the percentage during the Great Depression. We have a president who is staging photo ops and threatening to unleash the United States military on its own citizens. The table is being laid out for us. Everything that needs addressing is being served up. It is horrifying, and it's a gift. Instead of spending our time and energy digging up problems, the problems are being illuminated for us so we can spend our time and energy digging for the solutions. It is really easy to get discouraged, but we don't have that luxury. We are the people who are here to make this a better place. It is clear what those on the lowest levels of spiritual awareness are here to do, and we will not capitulate. Let's talk about how we see human nature playing out in the footage we see. We've talked about the frailties that are built into the humans in this school, and one that is clearly on display is the love of power and privilege. For some, it is more important than oxygen or even life itself. It's the natural trajectory for humans to seek more and more power while demanding less and less accountability. It is unloving to indulge either. In all my years, through all sorts of presidents, I have never had the sense that one would be willing to burn this entire country to the ground if it served his ego. This is exactly where we are right now. He is void of empathy and basic human decency. It is terrifying to see someone from the lowest levels of spiritual awareness when they have this level of power. And it's disheartening to see how many are unwilling to stand up and protect the Constitution that they swore they would protect. It is scary to realize that democracy is so very fragile. We see the people who are in the streets demonstrating their unwillingness to go along further with the clearly documented abuses of power that law enforcement officers see as their right. And how does law enforcement react to being called out on their abuses? They abuse further in full view of the world, and they do it like they know they will not have to answer for their abuse. The system is set up to protect them. We need to remind ourselves of what the mission of law enforcement was meant to be. Law enforcement was to serve and protect. We pay their salary so that they will keep us safe. Watching the raw footage of the demonstrations makes that difficult to remember, to serve and protect. This mission was meant to be something they did for everyone, not just those who are exactly like them. It is clear to see from demonstration footage that there are two completely different standards that they hold. A few weeks ago, there were white people who stormed the Michigan Capitol with guns and fury to protest the stay-at-home orders. The law enforcement officers allowed them to scream in their faces, and they never even flinched. Contrast that with the images you are seeing now. Instead of watching the news, I find I get the most out of watching the raw video without commentary added. When I do hear the commentary, I want to throw my phone across the room. There was the time that the white woman was leisurely carrying 2 big bags of merchandise out of a Target where the glass had been broken. She wasn't the least bit concerned with getting caught. As she strolled out, the news commentator said that she hoped the woman was not looting. Maybe she worked there. Have you ever heard that possibility suggested for a person of color? Watch the raw footage and you will see that it doesn't really align with the headlines. You see very organized young white people who dress alike and have almost an assembly line procedure of spray painting, breaking glass, and tossing incendiary devices into businesses. Then they walk on to their next target, completely unaddressed by law enforcement. They are able to do this in an almost casual fashion because they know that the protesters will have their cause dismissed because of what they're doing, and that it will be the people of color who will take the beat down and carry the reputation for being destructive. You see protesters doing what they are allowed to do under the Constitution, peacefully expressing their rejection of police brutality, and then you see them attacked by officers. Pay attention to the raw footage. Don't let anyone tell you what is happening. Watch it with your own eyes. Every interaction in life comes down to an exchange of energy. It's fascinating to watch this play out in the raw footage of what is happening at protests around the country and around the world. The protesters want their concerns about systemic police violence that is making their fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness impossible. They want the respect afforded them that Caucasians are automatically granted. In the protests, where they are allowed to express their feelings and say what they want to say, which are rights granted by the Constitution, and that happens without physical attack or the unleashing of chemical weaponry, they feel heard. They say what they are there to say, and everything remains calm and peaceful. Then you watch the video of when law enforcement decides to make an aggressive move, and you see the tide turn. It's wild. They are there to protest police brutality and are met with more of same. It leads me to wonder what the law enforcement side is fighting for. Are they fighting to retain the right to be abusive? What are they defending? The right to keep doing it? We further endanger law enforcement as souls when we outfit them with military gear that encourages them to feel good about destroying their fellow Americans. I feel deep pain for those who are being put in the position of following orders that run contrary to what they know in their souls is their true purpose for being in this school. Many will have to make some very agonizing decisions in the weeks and months to come. Many in law enforcement are doing nothing but proving the point that the protesters are trying to make. But they are so heavily indoctrinated in the us versus them mentality that they can't see that. Another thing they can't see is that there are eyes everywhere. I watched a video of multiple law enforcement officers dragging a person behind a barrier. Then they looked around to see if anyone could see them, after which they brutalized the person in the exact fashion that the protests are about. What they failed to realize is that someone was filming it from up above. Once you see that, you can't unsee it, and you can't fool yourself into thinking that this is only about what happened to George Floyd in Minnesota. We're at a decision point, either more police brutality or reform. This is our moment. You either choose to identify with the oppressed or the oppressor. Understand that choice will either move you forward or backward in your spiritual awareness levels. In the places where the police brought calm energy and an understanding of the legitimate complaints, true healing took place. The exchange of energy elevated both sides. It may come off as being anti-cop to bring their abuses to light, but it's actually a gift to the souls of those who, in the function of their work as law enforcement officers, have given in to the darkness and are dragging their own souls backwards. I wonder what it feels like for them to see the video evidence of what they're doing and who they have become. The system, as it sits now, seems to push a narrative that police work is really, really stressful, which I don't doubt. But if an officer goes completely off the rails and hurts someone, it is almost to be expected. But to what other professions do we grant this excuse? If a surgeon is overworked and overstressed, and as an outlet for their frustration, they just start brutalizing and murdering the patients on the operating table, I don't think we would give them that pass. This narrative endangers the souls of those who take on the work. It invites them to dip into the darkness whenever it suits their need, which is a very unloving way to support them. It would be much more loving to sort out those who are not emotionally equipped to do the work before they're hired, and to support the mental well-being of those who are on the force. And if it becomes clear that an officer has a problem with controlling their outbursts, either at home or at work, they need to be removed. Our job as students in this school is to support the spiritual growth of all our fellow students. When we see that we have created systems that produce something that is the opposite of that, it is our responsibility to remake the system. Checks and balances are the gifts we give each other to ensure that we have our best shot at staying on track and continuing to move forward. It is unloving and counterproductive to allow our fellow students to wreck themselves simply to keep the system intact. This is the year we vowed to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, as our growth can only happen when we face that which makes us uncomfortable. Seeing the images of what is going on now is deeply uncomfortable. There is a reason that groups of white people are causing destruction and looting. They want you to be so uncomfortable with all of this that you retreat into the space in your head where looting and such makes you want the process to stop and go away. That is exactly how they keep the toxic systems in place. They prey on your retreat from the uncomfortable. The reason there are white people systematically breaking windows and promoting looting is that they know that many will retreat into the comfortable narrative they have in their minds that prioritizes things over people. They are hoping to trigger you back into the comfortable thought pattern that others are bad and deserve bad things to happen to them. For many, it is working. They can't get past the looting to see the murder and mayhem. They are not watching the raw footage of what is happening so that they may realize that those who are destructive are not the same people as the ones protesting. Those who are destroying have the goal of distracting you from the issue at hand. We can hang in here with that which is uncomfortable because we want to see the change that is possible on the other side. We want a world that respects all people and all their different life paths. You need your very soul shaped by people who are working different life paths than your own. It is your responsibility to push yourself to take in the experiences of others who are unlike you. You can never be your biggest, wisest self if you are locked within the walls of your prison of only looking in the mirror to see what is true. Not only do you not have all the answers, you don't even know most of the questions. It is your job to make yourself uncomfortable by opening up to the lessons that others are learning on their path, because your path does not contain all wisdom. When you are insulated and isolated, you are missing the richness of life. You are missing the full scope of humanity. And when that happens, you are likely not going to care what happens to those outside your bubble. That act of not caring drags your own soul backwards. I understand that this is a difficult task. Whenever your sense of self, your identity, is tied up in allegiance to a system, it is like a small death to find out that they might not have deserved your respect. That is a really hard thing to process. For many, especially older people, part of what made people feel good about themselves is they identified as law-abiding citizens. Their unfailing support of law enforcement was part of what they felt made them good people. But their ability to believe this was rooted in not being the people who are targeted and harassed. They probably can't imagine that really happens, and many of them are unlikely to seek out the raw footage that would drive that point home. In fact, many of them watch a news channel that edits the raw footage and adds narrative that confirms their ignorance of reality. They live in an alternate reality. Their fear may be that to change the way law enforcement does their job would result in complete chaos. But what is being requested is that laws and decency apply not only to the citizens, but to those who enforce the laws. You need to be compassionate with these people because their worldview was instilled very early and it has not been challenged. Their beliefs are all the way down to the bone. Maybe you show them some of the raw footage. Maybe you gently coax them into the real world. Or maybe it is you who has a hard time coming to terms with the new information you are taking in. If, in this time of big reveals, you get information that goes against what you have believed, ask yourself where the feeling of resistance comes from. What would you be giving up if you changed your mind? We must let some things die before we can exalt in the rebirth. What must die is every thought and institution that fails to recognize that we are all of the same source, that we all have our processes that look different yet lead to the same outcome. We must remember that we are all of the same value in the eye of our Creator. Love and compassion for ourselves and others is the only way forward, and anything that impedes that must die. Thanks for listening to Rebirth Revolution. If you have any questions, email us at rebirthrev@gmail.com or leave a comment on rebirthrevolution.com. Until next week, be your own reporter. Watch the raw footage. Resist the urge to make it all stop. Check in on those you love. And gently share what you see with others who need to see it. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay safe and be strong for your fellow human beings.